There we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of our wonderful viewers out there in the interwebs and beyond. My name is Warren. This is Space 1999, this episode. And this evening, we have some very, very special guests along with us for the ride tonight. And of course, we're all watching the wonderful return to the moon tomorrow from NASA and the Artemis 2 launch. And we are joined by a couple of wonderful individuals. First off, Mr. Andy Tucker. Andy has been a convention supporter, Space 1999 fan for many years. And you were back at the Los Angeles convention as well, right, Andy?
Correct. Yes.
Awesome. Well, we'll circle back in a minute. But most importantly and prestigiously, we are joined tonight by Dr. Kelly Fast from NASA. And Kelly was also a part of that event. And we're just real thrilled to have her a part of the broadcast this evening.
It's wonderful to be here, Warren.
Well, this is going to be very exciting. Yes, your work at NASA, you even did a little panel for our convention there back in September. And just tell everybody real quick what you do, what you're sort of involved with there at NASA.
Well, I'm the acting planetary defense officer at NASA headquarters, and I lead the Planetary Defense Coordination Office. We handle the portfolio of projects that are tasked with finding asteroids before they find us, and then possibly getting asteroids before they get us, and or the moon for that matter, which has been an issue lately. And then also cheering on the Artemis 2 launch, not directly involved there, but it's a big agency activity and priority. And so I'm gonna be watching like everyone else, but big, speaking of the moon, big Space 1999 fan that, thanks to being influenced by the pilot as a kid, that might be why I ended up here. So I'm very, very grateful and a big fan.
Well, nice, and it's just so fascinating to find a Space 1999 fan in your field of work and right at NASA. It's just amazing to me, and like I said, the timing and coincidence of having you on tonight is just wonderful.
Oh, this is so much fun.
So listen, folks, we're going to be discussing a fan favorite episode from year 2, of course, called Mark Of Archanon. And I'm just going to start things off here, guys, with Andy first. Do you have any recollections of seeing this episode way back when, maybe first run or?
Actually, yeah. Basically, I remember because where we lived in England at the time, which was in the Midlands, we had ATV, and they showed all the episodes. And a few years later after that, they showed reruns. And then we moved to the Southwest, and there was more reruns. So there seemed to be this constant, Space 1999. Which was fine by me because, growing up on Jerry Anderson, it was my favorite Jerry Anderson show, still is. Yeah, I mean, I guess like everybody, I was kind of disappointed at the beginning when, year 2 started, and I'm like, what's going on? And as Freddie would say later on numerous occasions, nobody will notice. It's like, well, I was 11 and I noticed, and I stuck with it though. I guess I was hoping it would get better, but and perhaps they'd bring back some of the old characters somehow. But it was the hardware for me at the start, and the hardware through year 2 was still the main reason that I watched. And of course, we had a wonderful ship on the show. So
absolutely top-notch effects throughout it, and those were even, I think everybody's of the same opinion, even ramped up for year 2. Right. So Brian Johnson and his team knocked it out of the park. That's interesting though. So and Andy, just really quickly, we should just sort of tell everybody. So you're involved actually with your own YouTube channel now called Model Base Alpha, correct?
Yeah, basically, obviously made models as a kid, especially, the FX Space 1999 ones. And it was during COVID, I've got all these model kits sat around and don't have any, skills for building them. And I'd noticed there was a couple of other guys that had started, especially like military model kits. So I thought, well, maybe it'll be interesting to see if I can develop some skills and, actually progress with this. And as these guys had, inspired me, perhaps inspire, somebody else to, break open those kits and build them. So that was the basis for that.
Nice. Yeah, there's an incredible fan base of modelers and design experts online. It's probably more pages and more numbers than for the series itself. The special effects are and say what you will, and in my mind, they still hold up today.
Oh, definitely.
Right? Those old practical effects, and I mean, of course, as you mentioned, Andy, the Eagle spacecraft itself is just, it's so iconic and
well, it's just timeless.
Yeah, exactly, and it's one of the reasons why a lot of people remember the series is the Eagle itself, right?
No, I mean that for me. I hate to say it is the star of the show. I know perhaps that's a contentious issue, but for me, you just can't beat that. The landing and the takeoff is just classic. Yeah.
I actually have an Eagle on my desk at NASA headquarters, and
well, that is cool. That is very cool. Yeah.
And it frustrates me that people don't ask about it. I'm like, oh my goodness. It's bad enough that like a lot of the younger generation that they haven't even watched Star Trek. But then it's okay, I'm not even going to start with Space 1999, but like, you got to watch this. And Andy, like you were saying, the models, the sets, year one sucked me in. I was telling you guys earlier, the music and year one. Oh my! I mean, this is the record I got when I was a kid. I didn't buy this later. I had this, and I lived for this. It was before we had pictures online that we could go immerse ourselves in. And similarly, I watched. I had to ask my mom because I remember where I was when I saw the pilot, and I said, were we just watching it and I got to see this show? And she's like, no, you saw a preview or something and you were the one telling us that we had to watch this show. and so really getting tied into it, and with the music and the sets and the Eagle and the transition to year two, similarly seeing it as it was broadcast. I can't remember, I don't have the same memory of, I was here when I saw Mark of Archanon, but I do remember like seeing a magazine and talking about this change for year two and this character Maya and some of these other details, and it was a big switch with a whole different feel with the music, and costumes changed up. Left a main mission, but I even call my landing page at work internally main mission. Go to command center, but still I could have a lot of fun with it. But like Andy, we're talking about the reruns, and I remember being really frustrated. I grew up in LA, and I remember going through the TV guide, and I would see that some stations would be broadcasting reruns, but they were like elsewhere in LA, and I couldn't get them on. I remember being, maybe I was a brat. I just remember being like really upset that probably crying because I couldn't pick up one of those Space 1999 reruns. And but having seen it as it came out, I just remember that was just such a big deal. And but I didn't have any friends who were into that, and so it's really wonderful having kind of I watched the community from afar, and it was fun to finally engage. And you all have done such an amazing job, kind of developing and fostering the community and all that. And so it's been really amazing.
Well, thank you, Kelly. And since you both chimed in with your recollections, I'll just quickly relay my story from growing up in Canada and watching this episode in particular. conjures up a sort of a nightmarish fever dream that a number of Canadian children had back in 1975 or 76, because for some strange reason, space was picked up and aired nationwide on the CBC here in Canada. And for some reason, once we got into year two, and you guys just nailed it. I mean, the changes were so stark and drastic. It was a shock to the system for sure. But on top of that, when they actually aired Mark of Archanon, they went on to actually rerun it 3 times in a row the following 3 weeks. So for some strange reason, they aired Mark of Archanon 4 times in a row, and we were all as fans going, "No, not again!" So, yeah, just a funny little aside there from Canada, but there are some. I just want to take a moment as well to say hello to everybody out there. Alexa was out there saying hello. This is Nancy. Hello, Nancy from Canada, from Calgary. We've got Debbie Ray chiming in. Yeah, we're all excited. This is fantastic. We got Robert Hill from Australia. Hello, sir. Yeah, thanks for joining us, Kelly. Tuning in from Calgary. There's Nancy. Simon's out there as well. And we have so excited for Artemis. Absolutely. That's going to be the recurring theme here tonight, Simon, for sure. And we've got Mr. Arthur Hora. Hey, buddy. How you doing? Randy Lee's out there as well. And Christine from Canada as well. So thank you, everybody out there. The other thing I was just going to mention briefly here with now, Kelly, of course, we're probably going to talk about quite a few facets and dynamics with your work at NASA there. But I'm going to start off with the fact that and I've talked to Roy and several people about this, is when the show was first on, it really was, and especially to a 5 or a 6 or a 7-year-old, an extension of all things NASA. It was, and even the Eagle design, a lot of people have said, was grounded very much in real world aesthetics and these designs that we were already familiar with, and the fact that we had just walked on the moon a few years previous, right? So it wasn't, to look ahead 25 years to 1999 was very realistic, I think, for anyone growing up in that era. And just your thoughts on that, like when you first were watching space, I mean, did this sort of in some way inspire you to go on to land where you're at today, or did it was it just sort of a happenstance?
Oh, certainly a part of it. I mean, I guess I was already, born a geek. And I guess that's why, as I found, I was the one who saw like this preview and told my family, we've got to watch this show. And I do remember that, if I'm remembering correctly, the pilot ran 2 weeks in a row. And that was worth it. I remember seeing it, I guess, or maybe it was because I remember being in a hotel in San Francisco with my family and like sitting on the couch there watching this pilot, and then watching it again at home in LA. And so maybe they just aired it 2 different times. But between that and Star Trek, the two of those together were just, it was just like this other world I wanted to be a part of. And especially as, I don't know, a young woman growing up in the 70s and 80s, I was kind of on my own in this fandom. And so, but it was a wonderful, kind of, just fantasy escape to just enjoy these. And it's interesting for myself, especially growing up in LA, because I decided from all that I want to be an astronomer. Why? I don't know, because with all the city lights, why did I go the astronomy instead of like, engineering or, I don't know that I ever even, I sort of maybe thought about it would be cool to be an astronaut, but I don't know. I'm probably not the right personality type. And so for me, it really was the astronomy direction. But, again, going back to, like you were saying, like with Space 1999, the sets and the Eagles, but the special effects, I mean, maybe sometimes they weren't the best, but a lot of times using those actual models and filming them and not, some of the early CGI and everything, it really was striking. And so I think it was just that inspiration and, again, how I ended up where I am, I just decided I wanted to be an astronomer, went to school, kind of figured out what that meant later. And you're right, Space 1999 should have connected me to NASA, but I really wasn't, I don't know, I wasn't thinking that. I kind of fell into it, where in graduate school, I ended up working at NASA Goddard Space Flight Center. And that's when I kind of realized that's what I loved as the kid, the planets. And really as a kid, the planets, and got involved in planetary science research and in planetary astronomy. And then when I went to NASA headquarters to manage programs, it sort of evolved around that. I ended up taking on near-Earth object observations and planetary defense. And so, but it's kind of fun because everything comes back to the moon, and everything comes back to Space 1999, because we look at near-Earth objects, asteroids and comets that could approach, pose an impact hazard to Earth or approach Earth's orbit. And so we refer to the moon as NEO prime. It's our most persistent near-Earth object. And as I mentioned, as part of our work, and we were looking for asteroids that could pose an impact threat to Earth. And we actually had, last year, the most significant potential future impact threat with this asteroid designated 2024 YR4 that had a chance of impacting the Earth in 2032. And we were able to kind of retire that threat, shrink that uncertainty about where it could be in 2032 off the Earth. But then it still remained there for the moon at like 4.3%. And then we couldn't observe the asteroid, and we thought we wouldn't know anything until 2028. But the folks who did observations with the James Webb Space Telescope thought, I think we can really push the capabilities and try to detect this thing. And so they did just last month, and we were able to, with those observations, it was possible to shrink where it could be in 2032 off the moon. This asteroid, it's a 60-meter chunk of rock that's going to buzz the moon. It's not going to impact. Part of me, I'm a little disappointed, because as a scientist, that would have been really cool. And we were talking about, like, you've got black sun in the background there, and in black sun, the asteroid almost hit, and then it was gravitationally deflected, and which was a lot of fun. So as a scientist, it would have been fun, but here we've got astronauts, launching to the moon tomorrow. Space is big. The odds of something hitting something else are slim, but it's nice to know that at least we're not tracking something of a size that could do damage that's going to impact the Earth or the moon. So anyway, that's a much longer answer than you were.
No, that's okay. That's wonderful. So I was just thinking here, folks, that of course, in relation to Mark of Archanon, and Andy, I'll maybe spin this your way a little bit, since you're more on the visual effects side of things. We did mention year two, they up their game a little bit, but of course there's a famous scene in Mark of Archanon with the eagle flying through an asteroid field, and it left a little to be desired, I'd say.
Yeah, you kind of have to wonder what was going through their heads as they were filming that. I mean, I've never seen anything, from Brian Johnson or any of the, the crew saying, well, the budget had been, slashed, and, we had to, throw, balls of tin foil or whatever. But I mean, it certainly seemed to let the slide down a little bit, considering, what they'd achieved before. So, yeah.
But you know what? I'm trying to think of another instance, even theatrically, where an asteroid sequence had been even attempted before. I can't think of one off the top of my head. Maybe some of the people out there in the comments can chime in. But your mention of Brian Johnson, Andy, of course, it's amazing what he did in 3 years, because he, of course, went on to do the visual effects for Empire Strikes Back, probably one of the most famous and well done asteroid sequences of all time.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, maybe he'd, picked up a few pointers of what not to do.
he probably got the memo and the feedback not to use tinfoil balls, but then suddenly in 1979, 1980, somebody mentioned to him to start using potatoes.
Yeah.
And actually, that's what our community says. Asteroids tend to be shaped like as potatoes. Not all of them, but a lot of the times we get, if asteroids come close enough to do radar imaging of them, you see a potato shape pretty often, sometimes
Yeah.
top, sometimes other shapes, but that's a good analogy.
That's funny.
And it's funny because that Star Wars episode, kind of like the Space 1999, or Star Wars movie, like the Space 1999 episode, is something we often point to about how we tend not to have. We don't work with asteroid swarms, at least in our solar system right now, at least at this time in history. Everything's kind of cleaned out, and like we'll note that, if we always say, oh, it's not like Star Wars where you're flying through the asteroid field. If you're standing on an asteroid out in the asteroid belt, you wouldn't see like the next one. But still, then it's not so fun for people making, movies and television shows. So you need to have a little more action. And so
You do. But you know what? You just jogged my memory, Kelly. One of my favorite science fiction TV series more recently was something called The Expanse. And I'm not sure if you guys have seen it or not, but it was touted as being, and it shows one of the most scientifically accurate depictions of life in the inner solar system. And of course, a lot of what goes on is within the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, and it's mankind who's developed colonies on various large asteroids, and they travel back and forth, and they mine some of the smaller ones for ice, and think it's The Expanse. I highly recommend if anybody out there hasn't seen it, to check it out.
Definitely.
Yeah, you're right, but they really respect orbital dynamics, and it's complicated and.
But maybe not as fun, like you said.
Well, it's funny because just last week I did an interview with an author who is doing some background research, and it's an author who has also had movies made off of their books. And I tried to make the case that, reality can be pretty exciting too.
Right.
So we'll see what happens.
Well, I think the thing with Space 1999, and especially in the Mark of Archanon, is you have that technological limitation. You can't just say, "Oh, raise shields," and flip to the next page of the script. There's some cause and effect there that has to be dealt with. Now, whether that's due to the wonky landing gear that gets shown or not is another matter.
But no, you're right, Andy, because I mean, the Eagle, as we knew it, never really had a defensive shield system. I guess similar to the Millennium Falcon, right? So it would have been very susceptible, and hence it was, having to careen and pivot in order to try and avoid these.
Though I guess like Ring Around the Moon had, they kind of went that direction. So
the anti-gravity shields. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But I mean, the thing is, if you're traveling, warp 7 or whatever, and you've got a speck of dust coming at you,
Oh yeah.
And that's exactly it. Yeah. Randy, you're right, because we're always telling people, we're talking about asteroids that are way, 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 way smaller than the Earth. Why are we worried about them? It's the kinetic energy, it's the mass and the velocity. And so
but maybe those asteroids, those chunks of rock in the Mark of Archanon weren't actually moving that fast, and whatever composite materials they have in the 1999 was able to take the damage. That's the way I look at it. So
usually for us, it's the metal asteroids that we would worry about. They're the denser ones, but right. I guess they weren't so much in that episode. But hey, I guess we don't want to judge what happens in another solar system. So.
No, wonderful. A couple of comments coming in, guys, and I think we talked about this before we went live here tonight. Is that Mark of Archanon, of course, in relation to all things year 2 and some of the changes, was actually a really good episode for Nick Tate.
Yeah.
And Alan's character, and I, for one, always, and Roy's of the same opinion, very excited to see Nick Tate in an episode, because Alan was everybody's hero in year 1, right? And the famous story that he was actually getting more fan mail than other people. I'll say. So
Oh,
he was by far, one of the most popular characters. But yeah, he had a really nice role in right even from the beginning of the episode when they're down in the catacombs and his relationship with his aide there, and then of course with is it Ettrick?
Ettrick,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, for sure, for sure. He sort of takes on that fatherly role, and yeah, like I said, it was nice to see Nick's role expanded a little bit because so many instances in year two, he was barely in it, right? So another plus in my mind for the episode.
Well, I think, especially with regards to Nick, because I did a little bit of homework, I did some brushing up on the episode, and The Vault, the book, The Vault, did mention that there was a cut scene at the start, because, people question, well, why was, Alan Carter down in, searching, for minerals, and apparently one of the cut scenes was he was there because whatever they were searching for was needed for the life support systems for the Eagles. So adds a little bit more, substance. But like you say, Nick did get a fair shake of the stick in that episode, and yeah.
Well, I'd imagine too, with the limited personnel, it's often other duties as assigned, and so and obviously,
Yeah, I
Nick's,
think people
Nick's character would probably help out whenever he was
exactly.
asked.
Yeah. I mean, if you're, literally, miles from anywhere, what are you going to do? You're going to, pitch
Mm.
in and help out. So, yeah, I think, comments like, oh, well, what was he doing, down there are not really that valid. I mean, I think you can come up with some sort of, excuse for that sort of behavior.
Well, sure, and even when you consider that, I think that I'm not sure if they say it in any of the episodes, but I know in the expanded lore, it's stated that it's sometimes months between
Yeah.
systems, right? And
Yeah.
and you're just traveling, right? So it sort of makes sense, Andy. But having said that, I mean, that cut scene would have provided maybe just a little bit of background or context
Exactly. Yeah.
to more firmly establish things, and it makes sense when you look at it as
Yeah.
well, because
Yeah.
if it was to do with the Eagles and things like that, of course it was the perfect extension of Alan's character. But
And it's also, it kind of brings to mind the idea of, again, forward-looking
yes,
themes in Space 1999, because now we would call that in situ resource utilization. And that's a part of even what is happening with the idea of going back to the moon and trying to have a more permanent presence there, is being able to utilize the resources that are there instead of having to take everything there. And so it's like, oh yeah, Space 1999 was doing that in the Mark of Archanon. And so that's kind of cool.
that is actually, yeah. Kelly, I thought of just another little movie that I'm a big fan of myself, and you've probably seen it. It was actually just called simply Moon. And it was actually directed by David Bowie's son, Duncan Jones. It was his theatrical debut as a director, shot on a very low budget. I think it was like $5 million or something, but it came out in 2009 or 10 or somewhere in that era. But they also used practical effects, and that's why they were able to produce everything on such a budget. It's a fascinating little tale, and it stars, oh boy, I'm blanking. I'll think of it throughout the episode, but somebody in
look it up, because I don't think I have seen that one. So
it's really well done, and it just sort of harkens back to an earlier time with the way they did everything via practical effects. There's a little moon unit, traveling across the surface, just like you'd see out of a 1999 episode.
I'll have to look for that.
So, but yeah, no, listen, everything to do with, of course, now we touched on sort of a couple of facets here, but the other thing, Kelly, that's been in the news lately, the last few months, is 3i Atlas.
That's right.
in relation to deflecting a potentially dangerous object, hurling at us. I mean, that got a lot of press and coverage the last few months.
It did, and it didn't pose a threat to Earth, but it was discovered as part of just the nightly operations that our telescopes do, surveying the skies, looking to try to make new asteroid discoveries and get them into the catalog. And there had been 2 previous objects discovered that originated from outside the solar system. The first one was Oumuamua, which was it was, and when this all went down, I mean, this was kind of difficult because we hadn't really dealt with interstellar objects before, and trying to get deal with how it gets into the catalog at the Minor Planet Center and everything. And it was designated an asteroid, and then we had to come up with an interstellar designation. And then later on, there was evidence of outgassing. So it might have been, and we see that with asteroids in the solar system. We sort of have these transition objects that maybe are kind of between asteroids and comets. If they have some volatiles, ices and whatnot, that get heated and outgassed. And then, but there was that, and then comet 2I Borisov, which was discovered by Gennady Borisov in Crimea, and he's also part of the International Asteroid Warning Network that NASA organizes, that coordinates, that we work with.
But wasn't it your team that actually discovered 3I Atlas?
What was that?
Wasn't it your team or somebody?
And that's and so as we get to 3I, so it'd been a little while since the second one was discovered, and it was always predicted these things are certainly passing through our solar system. Our own solar system probably ejects material, and so it's expected to find it, but they're very fast moving, and so you might pick it up, but if you don't get enough observations, it might not be be able to put all the pieces together. But so this popped up then with 3I Atlas. It was named after the telescope that discovered it. We fund the Atlas survey. It's at University of Hawaii, and they have 2 telescopes in Hawaii and 1 in Chile and 1 in South Africa. And it was the one in Chile, the same one that found the asteroid 2024 YR4 that posed that potential future impact threat in 2032, that now we know it won't, and it'll just buzz the moon. But I was just telling a class today, we got to close that telescope down because it's creating too much work for us. It's been a mighty little telescope. So, but it was just kind of normal operations. The asteroid, the observations were sent to the Minor Planet Center. Anything that's moving that might be a new discovery. And then our folks at the Center for Near Earth Object Studies at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Southern California, they do the precision orbit determination of anything that ends up in the catalog to see, could it pose an impact threat to Earth in the near future or way down the road. And this thing, it came up because of the trajectory. They were like, ooh, I think we've got another interstellar object, because it was booking it, it was moving fast, but we had a big opportunity to observe it because it was on its way into the solar system. And then we had this long period of time to watch it, which was cool. And it was never going to get closer than the orbit of Mars to Earth. So it's not even by definition a near-Earth object. It's just an interstellar comet passing through. So now it became a really cool science target. And so our comet scientists, and universities and such, using telescopes to study its physical properties, the composition of the coma, because here you've got something that formed in another solar system. What were the conditions like? Is the chemistry, how is it similar to and different from comets in our own solar system? And also, since it was passing close to Mars, it was possible to use the Mars fleet and some other spacecraft in the solar system. We decided, let's turn this into is sort of an all hands on deck efforts using spacecraft that weren't used to looking at comets. Although this had been done before with Mars, because we had this happen a number of years ago, both with this one comet called Comet Ison, and then there was also a comet called Comet Siding Spring that came kind of close to Mars, and we actually ended up doing a hazard analysis to see if the dust environment would pose a hazard to the orbiters at Mars. and then they were able to observe it and everything. And so it had been done before, but it'd been a while. And now this was an interstellar object, really high scientific interest. And so they were successful with doing imaging from like Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter and the MAVEN orbiter, which I used to be program scientist for. So I was cheering that on, and some of the other missions that are in cruise on their way to their targets. And so all of that's to say, it was kind of a byproduct of part of doing that search for asteroids to find something that could be hazardous to the Earth for planetary defense. We can get some cool science discoveries and follow up on that. And so, and I know there are folks out there making claims about what it might be, and maybe trying to get press and everything. But honestly, it's a comet. It behaved like a comet all along. It's still behaving like a comet. And it's producing a lot of good science. And the folks who really, are doing the good work on comet science are coming out with some fantastic peer-reviewed papers on it. And believe me, I'm a scientist. I know scientists. If it was something other than a comet, they'd be making noise out there because we're too vocal. We won't shut up. And so anyway, so it was it went really well.
Nice. And just fascinating to hear your perspectives and points of view, Kelly. Andy?
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on Mark of Archanon?
Well, the thing that stands out for me, which is a great boon, is the lack of the rubber monster suit. So that's always, I hate to say it, but yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to think of his name from Battlestar Galactica. He had a clause in his contract. He said he'd walk if they ever put the rubber monster in. And James, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, with Ettrick and Pask, they did have some interesting costumes.
Yeah, they did. And you think, well, that's kind of like, perhaps Freddy. But I think, you want to go back to Jarek in Alpha Child, and there's that same kind of vibe going on. And it struck me, actually, because I rewatched the episode last night. It's there's a thing in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and they're talking about the Vlahurg and the Gugukvant. And one of them mentions that they were he was resplendent in his jeweled battle shorts, and I can't help but think that's just a little side swipe at perhaps that kind of thing going on. But yeah, I thought it was an interesting take on, there was, the whole Roman kind of almost Aztec cross-pollination.
Yeah, Roman Egyptian maybe.
Yeah, Egyptian. Yeah, there was a whole different
theme or vibe about their entire culture there. Yeah, no, for sure. The other thing, guys, that's interesting, we've talked about this in previous segments, of course, for year 2, is how this was one of the famous double up episodes, right, where Martin Landau and Catherine Shaw were off filming Rules of Luton, right, and they only make a brief appearance here, which did open it up, as we mentioned, for some of the secondary characters like Alan, but also for Dr. Russell to step up a little bit as well.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say it, I don't think it suffered. I mean, that might not be a popular opinion, but
no, it's fine.
It's I don't think it really hurt it per se. I mean, they had a valid reason, for not being, there, and stuff happens when you're not around. I mean, it's not like, oh, well, they all sit around twiddling their thumbs just because, the commander's not there. So,
right.
Yeah.
And I felt like more happened. I mean, there was certainly more depth to the script and everything. Like you mentioned with the rubber monsters. And when I go back and watch some of those episodes, I feel like there's not a lot that's very stimulating about it, except all of these, scenes running from the monster, Maya fighting the monster, and it's a shame because it's some fabulous characters, and this is what they were tasked with. But in Mark of Archanon, especially as a mom, and a mom who can go all mama bear when she really needs to, you had this story that was actually very touching, where you had a father who was willing to give his life for his son there when it came down to it. And he did, even despite, that virus and the rage and everything, and that he was willing to do that. And like you said, the relationships like that Alan Carter had, and Dr. Russell's involvement and everything. So they went into a depth maybe that sometimes was lacking in some of the other episodes, and so that made it nice too. To be able to connect more with the characters in that way, even if the costumes and everything were very creative.
And it seemed like, Yasko finally got a decent line, saying,
"Oh, true, very true." Yeah,
but it was almost an off the cuff throwaway remark when it was actually quite a profound observation, and it was nice to see her get some screen time. She's a lovely lady. So, but it just seemed like, well, perhaps a little bit more could have been made of that. Maybe it was, and, maybe, it got cut or, written out or whatever. But I thought that was quite a profound statement. So
I really like the idea that, of course, in discovering, these two buried, in the catacombs of the moon, it sort of it lends itself to, maybe a little bit of an ancient alien theory, things like that, that I always found fascinating, right? And the other thing that they did that was really neat in this episode is they sort of tried to establish a little bit of in-universe continuity by a simple line, where somebody mentions the Flamen, the death glow, that they'd seen that on a previous world somewhere, I think.
Yeah.
And that's something they rarely did as well. But it's just, those little things I really did go a long way in establishing a little bit of in-universe continuity.
Yeah, there was definitely a little bit of, a layer of depth that perhaps, I think, you referenced, the rules of Luton, not to disparage Luton in any way, shape or form, but I'm always reminded there was the 70s was great for comedy records in England, and there was somebody who did this kind of jokey song about Luton Airport, and then every time I see or hear Luton, all I can hear is, I'm just trying to think of her name, was Lorraine Chase or Lorraine Kelly. She had this awful song about Luton Airport, and it's just can't get it out of my head. So yeah.
Oh, funny. Some comments coming in, folks. David's out there. Hey, Dave, how's it going? Mixed feelings on Mark of Archanon. The 1970s was the era of Chariots of the Gods. So the revisit of a possible visit by aliens during the origins was a nice idea. Yeah, 100%. Alexa's chiming in. I love Rules of Luton. And it is in depth, especially the conversations about Earth and how they almost destroyed each other by infighting until realizing you have to work together. Yeah, great scene, Alexa. Yeah, 100%. And then beyond that, Kelly, let's talk a little more about. Sorry, I'm having to navigate comments and everything at the same time. So sorry if I'm.
You do a fabulous job of that.
Roy usually looks after that part of it. So I'm jumping back and forth in a little.
I have to say, Warren, I'm a little disappointed. I can't see them this end. So
you can't see which?
The comments don't come up this end. I was kind of hoping we'd have like a sneak preview of what was going on. So.
Yeah, they're only available on the producer side of StreamYard. So yeah, but it's so we can see them rolling in, and then of course we can bring them up on screen. You guys can see those ones, right?
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, no, and there's a lot of people tuning in tonight, so I just wanted to take a moment and thank everybody again. Christopher Michael Dalton's out there. Loved the friendship between Alan and Ettrick in the episode, plus Veronica Lang's dual performance as Lyra and Amarna. Yes, absolutely. And some funky 1970s hairdos going on along with that. There was some conversation about alien rocks and all the glisters.
That seemed to be a thing with recent movies too.
Well, yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. So Another one from Alexa. Pro tip: open up another browser window, mute it. Oh, then you can watch the comments. Oh, okay.
Oh, that's right.
That's too technical for me, Alexa. So
Well,
thankfully, I can just see them anyway.
Yeah, this isn't my machine. This is my wife's, so
Yeah.
I'm not going to fiddle with this because this is her work computer. So
I think Alexa is actually pretty well versed with StreamYard because she does a YouTube channel herself, and she does review episodes of Space 1999 and UFO. She's a big fan of UFO. Kelly, were you a fan of any other Anderson series?
No, it was just Space 1999. And if the others were aired, I don't remember seeing them, at least in the LA area. Maybe they were there and I just didn't know. And so I didn't see some until much later on, like to be able to see them on streaming. So it was really just 1999 and that and Star Trek.
Well, you know what, and I think it was similar up here in Canada. The other Anderson series were pretty obscure, and and if they did air, they were like late at night sometimes, but it was space was there was such a marketing blitz around it, right? And there was so much hype and buzz and promotion, and it, of course, yeah, it was running in prime time when it finally did air. But the other ones, not so much. I remember seeing some UFO. I liked UFO, and I still do to this day. But it was always scheduled at a bizarre time, it seems. So I didn't get a chance to see a lot of them till much later.
I just remember as a kid that I seem to recall that UFO was branded an adult show and was definitely on later. Well, it certainly was where I lived.
Well, it was. It dealt with a lot of really adult themes and concepts that were sort of groundbreaking for the time, the late 1960s. When you compare what UFO was dealing with and covering on a weekly basis versus Star Trek, produced at the same time, there's no comparison.
No, so I had to put up, unfortunately, with Captain Scarlet, Thunderbirds, Joe 90s. Terrible childhood. Terrible.
Yeah, and in Canada, you see a lot of the Super Marionation series didn't even air, or they were maybe just a little before my time. So I was born in '69, so I might have missed them. Interestingly enough, though, of course, we're all gearing up to get together again this September in Manchester. And for anybody out there planning on attending, we'll be having some announcements coming up here in the next couple of months in relation to the prop and exhibit room, of course. And I think, Andy, are you coming? You and Amy coming again?
Not sure. I think it's a distinct possibility.
Okay, distinct possibility.
Well,
okay.
Well, we got the storyboards because we got the.
Oh, that's right. I totally forgot that. Andy and Amy recently won our draw. We had a draw before Christmas for early bird ticket sales. That's right. Totally forgot.
Amy won, not I.
Yeah.
She always wins competitions. I never win anything. So
I don't know where my brain is tonight, guys. I apologize, but yeah, what an ordeal that was. We just you just got the storyboards, but I sent them almost 2 months ago from Canada.
Yeah.
It took an incredibly long time to show up, and we were quite worried that they had gotten lost, but thankfully they
arrived safely in the end. So
found a new home. So sorry, I got off a topic there, but the exhibit room coming up, we're going to have some announcements, and we're going to sort of expand upon things a little bit. Of course, we're going to have some amazing things like hopefully Daryl's Eagle cockpit set again, which was on display in London, and it's just an amazing experience.
Amazing work. I mean, Daryl, that was just perfect.
There's no words, Andy. And Kelly, you should come along.
I'm thinking on it, Warren. Oh my goodness. But
it wasn't just the cockpit itself. It was getting to see Johnny Garco and Nick Tate.
I know.
It was just amazing. That they were there and able to sit in such an amazing replica that. Yeah. If somebody had said, well, that's not a replica, that's, 100% off the set, I don't think you'd have known the difference. I mean, just stunning work.
Yeah, the level of detail and the number of man hours that Daryl and his entire family and team put into that creation just Wow, unbelievable, unbelievable. But long story short, bigger and better for Manchester. So we're going to have, we're going to build upon that. And even this is, yeah, what a tangent. We're going to open it up to other Jerry Anderson properties and exhibits as well, including a lot of the original puppets from those early Super Marionation series. So yeah, there's going to be a lot more going on. We did actually announce the hotel here a couple weeks ago as well. It is a smaller facility, more intimate, but the goal on top of that is that I don't think anybody's ever done this for an event before, but we're going to try and take over the whole facility. We're going to rent out all of the rooms and have it play out that we're the only ones there. And I think that's very exciting because it's really going to, I think, make it a lot easier, even just to walk around in cosplay or things like that, knowing that we're not going to be seen by and mocked by local patrons in the public and things like that. So,
well, I just remember breakfast time at London that I don't think that the stairs were quite in evident that you might have expected. I think most people or the hotel patrons kind of took it in their stride. It seemed quite a relaxed atmosphere. So yeah, but it'd be nice for 3 days of a complete hotel for sure.
Yeah. Well, that's our intention anyway. I know there was a little delay in getting that word out there, and we're still actually waiting on the booking link. But once that hits, and when I say a smaller hotel, actually, yeah, there's only going to be about 50 rooms available. So based on what we saw in Los Angeles last year and London the year before, I think we'll easily book up that 50 rooms in a hurry. So. Yeah, everybody be watching for that. That's very excited. David saying he's all set. And some more comments here. Simon saying something about the Darians, hysterical as usual. And Nancy saying, sure hope I can make Manchester. And Simon, if I get to Manchester, I'll have another go at cosplay and recreating the 1999 newsreader from GTV. Is that, Simon, is that in relation to the broadcaster at the end of Breakaway? I think so. Yeah. Nice. Some very creative cosplay I've seen down through the years. I tell you, it's and even going back many years, like with the early Space 1999 events in the late 70s, early 80s, guys. I look back at some of those photos and I can't believe where some of these people came up with their ideas and where they acquired the manufacturing products that were used, and it's just incredible work. So maybe
didn't you have a jacket for sale at LA, Warren? And was that you selling a Space 1999 Year 2 jacket? Did it sell in the end?
I think so. Okay. And that was Andy. That was actually commissioned through a fellow named Charles Gordon, and he is on Facebook. And if anybody out there is looking for a Space 1999 related elfin costume, Charles Gordon does exquisite work. Just really incredible. Similar to the level of detail of the Eagle cockpit as we were just discussing. So yeah, drop Charles a line. I think I saw something though that he put out a word on his Facebook that if anybody is wanting things for Manchester, it might already be too late, because of course it takes several months to complete a project start to finish. But okay. Oh, and yeah, speaking of amazing cosplay, Alexa in Los Angeles. That's likely where somebody was mentioning Darian. Alexa was dressed up as a Darian in Los Angeles one day, and it looked amazing. Yep.
That is unfortunately why we didn't get to video Kelly's seminar, lecture or whatever at the convention. We were actually filming some cosplay in another part of the hotel. That is still being worked on, and if I do say so myself, does look pretty Good. Hopefully we'll be able to share that at some stage, because
Nice.
it was just a fun little thing that kind of got thrown together at the last minute, but the guys were fantastic. So
They were.
hopefully at some stage we can share that. So apologies to Kelly for not capturing her presentation, but we were busy elsewhere, and like I say, hopefully one day we'll be able to put that together. So.
No,
Yeah.
not a problem. There's plenty of videos out there of what we do already at NASA, and including our Planetary Defenders YouTube. But I know for me, again, kind of that was my first convention there in Los Angeles, and I really kind of watched the community from afar. So for me, with some of the cosplayers, it was kind of like seeing celebrities, because I'd like seen the pictures online, and then I'm seeing them in person, and comparing and having seen some of the pictures you've posted from the conventions over the years. So yeah, so for me, it was like seeing celebrities. Some amazing work. I threw my costume together, but I mean, the range of costumes from all the different episodes, and people showing up in different ones every day. I mean, that was incredible. It was so much fun.
Well, I think some people had several costume changes in a day.
Well,
I loved it.
and Alexa was one of them, because she was a Darien one moment, and then I turn around and she was like a UFO moon base girl. It's just amazing, with the purple hair and everything.
Oh, and as a Darien, I mean, it was wonderful, because again, I'd never come to the convention before, and I wasn't sure, like, should I stay in my own little space 1990 world, or 1999 world, or should I engage this community? I go walking into the hotel, and I see a Darien standing there, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so wonderful.
You're home. You're
so
home.
She was a fabulous way to, like, say, to have somebody saying welcome to the convention.
Oh, absolutely. And so, Kelly, like, when you and I had connected leading into Los Angeles last year, so that was your very first convention.
Yes, I'm kicking myself for not making it, sooner. I thought about it a few times. I mean, it was on the East Coast a few years ago, and I had a work-related activity, and I wasn't sure I could do both. Even back when it was in Los Angeles previously, was that the 1999 one? I was already living on the East Coast by then, but I mean, I will regret it my whole life, but there's a reason I showed up when I did. I got to at least be a part of some of this before all of us. None of us are around anymore who saw the pilot, But no, it's been wonderful engaging with this community. I just regret that I didn't do it sooner, and I really, really enjoyed seeing everyone.
Well, thank you. And listen, Andy, a shout out to you and Amy, because you guys have done some amazing work with documenting these Q&A panels for everybody, and then uploading that to your YouTube channel, Model Base Alpha. So we all thank you for that as well.
Well, thank you.
And Kelly, listen, I mean, we're glad to have you now, right? And so this will be, for all to see. And then I just had a thought here, maybe if you don't make it to Manchester, we're still going to have a live portion, like a live stream as well, and maybe we can dial you in for something on September 13th this year as well.
That would be great. Love to play that by ear. And again, tomorrow, I was making my notes here just for as we focus on, like, instead of the Eagles, the Artemis 2.
Yes.
Just a reminder that, last I knew, everything is still a go. There's 80% favorable for weather for the launch of Artemis 2 tomorrow. It's going to be, the launch window opens at 6:24 Eastern Daylight Time. So we'll be cheering on some lunar exploration. But again, kind of going back to where was some of that inspiration? It was from Space 1999. So at least for some of us.
Well, absolutely. And I did want to sort of finish off on that note in regards to all things Artemis. And it's just, we're all so, it's taken us all back to our childhood, because there was that connection between the series. And like I mentioned earlier, that the NASA and real life experiences and adventures, right, being translated onto the small screen. So here we are again. And 50 years later, it's hard to believe. believe. And we all just hope and pray that everything goes well. And I'm extra excited as well, because I believe it's the first time that a Canadian will actually be flying to the moon. And so there's a lot of firsts this time out. And yeah, I think everybody's going to be tuning in for sure. And that's great to hear. Even so, you say about 80% for good weather.
Yes, it's kind of held at that for the past few days, and so and that's pretty good, I think, in the launch world. So I also saw something about a space weather event, but I think that's supposed to have passed by the time of the launch. So I haven't heard of anything, and we even got like an internal email from our NASA administrator that things are moving forward. They're getting ready to do this, and so it's very exciting. And so we'll see what happens, because certainly safety is of utmost importance. And so there's still a lot to do leading up to the launch, but it's looking very good. So it's very exciting.
Wow. Just incredible. I still can't believe it. Right. And, strangely enough, I don't think it's really even gotten a lot of coverage and press and exposure. Whereas it should be this grandiose, mankind's return to the moon after all these years.
I know, I've noticed that too, although I've noticed with many of our activities at NASA and just in general, I think with news, and it's just the environment we're in now, where there's just this constant stream of information from all fronts. And right beforehand, that's all of a sudden when everything, I think, will focus on the launch, just like it seems to happen with other mission activities. But this is particularly important because, being the first time sending humans back to the moon, and to have gone like and their orbit will take them the farthest, ever from Earth. And so it's very significant, but my goodness, we are in a world with a lot of things coming at us. And so hopefully through the noise there tomorrow, that will kind of emerge as something that people get excited about.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. So, well, listen, we're going to start to wind down here, I think, in just a couple of minutes. I'd like to just take a moment to thank my two special guests this evening as well, Dr. Kelly Fast from NASA, and of course, Andy Tucker, along with Amy. I know Amy's in the background there, and we sincerely hope you can all make it to Manchester this September and celebrate the continuing 50th anniversary of Space 1999. Of course, we're sort of building upon it being the 50th anniversary of year 2 this time out. It should be a good time. And I'll just check some comments here. We might end the stream tonight by running our opening. We didn't launch with it because it does tend to copyright strike us. So we just want to try and avoid that. But any other final thoughts, Andy, Kelly?
I would just like to say the third trailer with Christian Anholt was just absolutely just brought a tear to my eye. It was because I think when Space 2099 was announced, I just looked at the Eagle and said, forget it, they're redesigned. But this has just grabbed my attention from the start. There's just been this whole vibe about the thing, and just Christian's work
his performance and delivery. You're right, Andy.
Amazing.
Thank you so much. It was.
I mean, I don't want to come across as but it's
no. It's no secret. Of course, we're also producing a short little film this year, and we're hoping to continue the story of Moonbase Alpha and of Space 1999. And this is near and dear to me. So I was involved in a couple of trailers now, and of course the original one with Anton from back in 2024. Sort of started that whole hype train, and then Moonrise was one I helped commission in the last few weeks here, and it was a joy to work with Christian. I'd actually talked to him back in London about doing something. He really wanted to be a part in some capacity as a nod to his father and the work that his father had done all those years ago. And Anton's just a wonderful individual. He went on to he appeared in a television series called Relic Hunter a few years ago with Tia Carrere, and he's But Andy, thank you so much. It was a pleasure to put together, and I'm just so honored to be a part of that continuing legacy, if you will, and continuing the story of our favorite moon base. So, yeah, well, let me just check some comments here again then. And thanks, Debbie. Yeah, everybody's chiming in on that third trailer. Well, I really appreciate it. But yeah, thanks to everybody. And just as a heads up, we're actually going to be taking a break for about an hour, but we'll actually be back with some more very special guests this evening. We're sort of doing a double duty, sort of all leading into that big NASA launch tomorrow with Artemis. It's very, very exciting time for especially to be a Space 1999 fan. So I think that's about it then. So I will wrap with that outro video. And guys, thank you very much. Any other final thoughts on Mark of Archanon or all things NASA Artemis 2 tomorrow?
No, I just want to say thank you very much for having me on, Warren, and lovely to meet you virtually, Kelly, and hope to see you in Manchester. So, no, just had a good time. Thank you very much.
Oh, same, Andy. It was so wonderful to get to meet you here and to get to discuss Mark of Archanon and so much more about Space 1999 with you. And again, Warren, thank you for the kind invitation. This was such a treat to get to do this and to get to lean into that childhood inspiration that keeps going on and share it with this community. It's wonderful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you both very much again. And my sincerest appreciation for everybody out there. We'll see you in about an hour, everyone. And here's that wonderful outro video. Don't laugh at Roy and I in these orange costumes. Okay. See you, everybody.
Okay. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.